Alright, this is page 338, and this video will be the middle of page 338, and we'll move on to page 339. So we're going to start with an Explore activity, identifying independent and dependent variables from a graph. In Explore Activity 1, you used a table to represent a relationship between an independent variable, time, and a dependent variable, distance. You can also use a graph to show this relationship. An art teacher has 20 pounds of clay but wants to buy more clay for her class. The amount of clay X purchased by the teacher and the amount of clay Y available for the class are shown on the graph. So here's how much clay was bought by the teacher. That's on the x-axis. And here's how much clay is available for the classes. A says, if the teacher buys 10 more pounds of clay, how many pounds will be available for the art class? Well, she starts with 20. It says right here, an art teacher has 20 pounds of clay but wants to buy more. Well, if she has 20 and she buys 10 more, how much is that? It's 30. It's real simple. Please fill in 30 right there. If the art class has a total of 50 pounds of clay available, how many pounds of clay did the teacher buy? How can you use the graph to find this information? So it says right here, if the art class has a total of 50 pounds of clay available, how much did the teacher buy? What you do is you go to the pounds of clay available, and that's going to be the y-axis. I know that because it says right here, clay available. And then you go find 50. And once you find 50, you then go over to the line, and then you go down to the x-axis. And where it's pointing on the x-axis is your answer. So what is the answer? It's going to be 30 pounds. And it says, how can you use the graph to find this information? What I did was, I said, find the point on the y-axis find the point on the y-axis of 50 pounds. Then go over to the line and then straight down to the x-axis. So I'm going to review what I did there. I found 50. I put a dot here, and then I traveled over to the line, and then I traveled straight down to the x-axis, and the number that it's pointing at the x-axis is my answer. Okay, we're going to continue on. This video is just going to move on to page 339. B says, what are the two quantities in this situation? Well, the two quantities are clay bought by the teacher and that's the x-axis. You don't really have to, it doesn't really ask that. And clay available to the class. And that's the y-axis. Now, how did I get this? I just went and looked at the axes. So if I don't have my graph in front of me, but whatever the words were here, that's one of the quantities, and whatever the words were here, that's the other quantity. So you just read your axes. Whatever's here and whatever's here is the answer to the question, what are the two quantities in this situation? All right, so the next question reads, which of these quantities depends on the other? Well, if you think about it, it's the clay available to the class depends on how much the teacher bought. The clay available to the class, I think I spelled available wrong. I'm going to fix it. The clay available to the class depends on how much the teacher buys. on how much clay the teacher buys. I'm going to put bought. What is the independent variable? That's the x-axis. Clay bought by the teacher. That's the x. And what is the dependent variable? Clay available. And that's the y one. All right, we are on problem C. C reads, the relationship between the amount of clay purchased by the teacher and the amount of clay available to the class can be represented by an equation in two variables. The amount of clay in pounds, that's y, is equal to the current amount of clay, 20, plus the amount of clay purchased. D says, describe in words how the value of the independent variable is related to the value of the dependent variable. Well, if you went back and look, the amount of let's see here, let's go back and look at it real quick. This first point right here is over 0, up 20. The second point is over 10, up 30. The third point is over 20, up 40. The fourth point is over 30, up 50. So every one of those numbers, the amount of clay available is always 20 greater than the amount of clay the teacher bought. And so that's what we're going to write here for D. Describe in words how the value of the independent variable is related to the value of the dependent variable. The y value is always 20 more or 20 greater than the x value, which is this right here, at 20 plus. All right, we're on the reflect, number 4. In this situation, the same units are used for the independent and dependent variables. How is this different from the situation involving the train in the first Explorer? Well, so both of these units are both clay, but in the situation involving the train, we were comparing the miles and hours. In the train Explorer activity, the variables were miles and hours. In this one, they were both clay, which I found to actually be kind of tricky. Number 5, tell whether the relationship between the independent variable and the dependent variable is multiplicative or an additive relationship. Well, what do you think it is? There's an addition sign right there. It's additive. And we have one more. I'm going to rewrite the answer number 5. Make sure you have enough time on that one. This is an additive relationship. We are on number 6. What are the units of the independent variable and what are the units of the dependent variable? Well, by units, we're not talking about clay, because we know we already know it's clay. But what we're talking about is how the clay is getting measured. And it's getting measured in pounds, and it's for both the independent and the dependent variable. And the reason we know that, I'll show you actually. I'll show you real quick. The units are right here, pounds and pounds. That's how we know that. All right. You are done with page 339. Good job.